almost. That work?
Yeah, thanks.
All right. All right, so I'm Tim Perfitt from Tucanu Software, and I want to thank Matt X for inviting me here today to talk a bit about an open source project that I've been working on for the last year plus called MDS. It was originally started out as kind of a small little tool called MacDeployStick, which then I changed it because I was going to put it in the App Store. It couldn't have the word Mac in it, so it became MDS, and that it grew outside of what its original purpose was. So we acronymed it to Mac Deploy Server for version 3.0. So let me show you kind of, this is what it looks like. And the idea behind it was that I wanted to have a place where you could get access to all the different tools in one place instead of having to kind of set them up separately. I work with a bunch of folks that were moving away from Deploy Studio and wanted to go to something else, and they weren't ready for they were MDM plus some other things, or they weren't quite ready for MDM yet. So that's kind of where MDS got its start. The reason we're kind of tacked on to this, or I'm here at the end of the monkey report session, is because we added in the monkey report into MDS in version 3. And the reason behind that was one of the things that one of the members of the MDS community, Patrick Exner, was talked about how everyone that used, a lot of people that use monkey report. And that was kind of my intro into monkey report. And so I saw that it was one of the things that it was like, one of the things MDS was missing was inventory. And I foolishly thought that monkey report was reports about monkey, and it turns out it's reports about everything, including one report about monkey, or maybe a few reports about monkey. So we added that in, and also MDS became this place where all open source tools could go and be able to kind of configure in one place and set up very quickly, and then learn about them, and then if you wanted to kind of scale them up, you could do that a bit more. So what I wanted to show you, so the monkey report service, the UI is similar to the Mac OS server UI. All the services run in the background, so you can quit, log out, and those services will still be running. It uses the built-in tools. One of the things that that folks would ask when they were deploying monkey, or just trying to do imaging or workflows from a web server, is that the Mac OS server, web server, went away. Apache still existed on client, but you had to command line kind of configure it. And so we added in the web service, which gave a centralized place to do all the other things that depend on web services, mainly monkey and monkey report. So we have a full web service that's built in as well. But the monkey report, we don't bundle monkey report with MDS. What we do is when you try and start it up, it checks to see if it is installed. If not, it goes out and says, hey, go ahead and download it. So as John was talking about, you download a zip. And then the way it works is that you go into setup and you do import monkey files. We have a little lock like any good performing Mac OS one. Import monkey files. What that does, it takes that zip you downloaded, you unzip it, it's a folder, and it imports all of the monkey report files. And what it does, it moves if you already have one there, it moves them out of the way, puts the new ones in there, and then migrates all the critical files back to monkey report, sets up the web server, sets up PHP, actually adds it to the web service. So you can see there's a monkey report here. And if you look in there, it has TLS enabled and PHP 7 enabled. So you don't have to do any of that configuration of the web server on your client. You can just set it up and it goes. And so it's a really quick way to kind of get running with monkey report and monkey and micro MDM and getting workflows going. So the idea is it's all one place that you can get it set up. And if you want to kind of expand those services. And one of the things that I found is that the people were using monkey report, but they wanted to use MDS to be able to kind of get those settings for it. And so you can really, it's really just a hosting environment for monkey report. So it's easy to use with existing setups as well. You can see that if I go back to the monkey report, there's these orange indicators indicators next to it. And what that does is once you've installed Monkey Report, it looks and sees what version there's an RSS feed from GitHub that'll say what version it currently is and sees that there's an update. So I didn't update this because I want to show it off. It says update available, installed version 5.3.3990, and there's a new version 5.5.1. So I need to install that. It gives a link to the actual GitHub repository, and so then I would just download that zip, unzip it, and then just import it. Actually, I think I just did download it. So then once it's installed, you can actually open up the web interface, and you can see here's the Monkey Report web UI that allows you to do it. One of the things you do have to set up is the users who's allowed to log in. And so I just have an admin user here, but you add in additional users here, and that goes and edits adds the little files that define the user to allow them to add to be able to access the web interface. And there's some practices allow you to specify where the folder is. So we've integrated with Monkey Report, and it's been one of the fun things is not just a lot of people using Monkey Report are excited about it, but there's a lot of people that didn't know about it that are now using Monkey Report, and they're like, this is pretty cool. And so it does use SQLite, as we're talking about before, that you really should have MySQL for production, but for what MDS does, up to a couple hundred clients, my understanding is that should be fine. And we're looking in future versions to migrate that over to use, or at least give an option for MySQL. So let me talk a little bit more about what MDS is. Let me present this. So one of the key pieces of MDS is that it's workflow-based initial deployment. So the idea is that you can now, like you could in the past, be able to script these deployments. And so there's two kind of scenarios where you really need that. One is if you have what's called a rapid return to service. If you have a machine that's not working and you want to boot to the recovery partition and reinstall macOS and then let the MDM take over, because that can be a lot of manual intervention. You got to hold down the Command R key, you got to go in and start reinstalling it, then go through Setup Assistant and those kind of things. This allows you to kind of automate all of that. And so that's the first one. The second one is that if you have this initial deployment, if you have 5,000 or 10,000 Macs, or even a couple hundred Macs that you want to deploy, that allows you to do some workflows to get all of your initial packages installed, like maybe Microsoft Office and Adobe Creative Suite and Monkey, and kind of hinge everything to be ready for when the person first opens it up. And one of the typical use cases is somebody would enroll in MDM, it would install the packages for them, but what would happen is either it would time out and they'd had to manually restart it, or it had network issues because the packages, maybe you have 10 gigs, 50 gigs of initial applications to install. That can take a long time for you able to do that. And so putting it into a workflow that runs from an SSD or even from a local web server can speed that up and assure you that all the utilities or all the applications are installed. It does include a full MDM with micro MDM, inventory with Monkey Report, and package management with Monkey. And it also includes a self-service portal with the software center with Monkey as well. So it's kind of in a great place to start out in a box if you want to be able to start deploying Macs right away. So the idea behind the workflows is you walk up to a Mac, the technician or the person setting up spends just a couple of seconds in front of it, and then they can walk away. The macOS installer, which is kind of the correct way to install macOS and packages initially now, can take a while to run, anywhere from 19 minutes on a fast SSD to a lot longer on iMac that has a spinning platter drive, but 30 minutes or something like that. But the idea is that you don't want to have your time wasted by that. You want to go walk up to it, touch it once, then walk away. Unbox it, set it up, kick it off, and then walk away. And so that's the whole idea, is that it's only a few seconds of time in front of it, and then 30 minutes later, your Mac is completely configured, rolled in MDM, packages are installed, everything. So the reason that MDS came about is that folks were like, well, we already have DEP and you already have MDM, why do you even need anything else, right? So the idea is that not all Macs are enrolled in DEP. NetBoot is dead, so the whole experience of walking up to a Mac, holding down the N key, and then having it kick off and be able to be completely restored is was something that's still required in some environments. And folks were using target disk mode as well, and so that's kind of been taken away as an option, or not target disk mode plus external booting. So the new T2 machines means you have to turn on external booting, which involves booting twice, right? Booting to recovery, enabling it, and then booting to the external drive. There's also if the Mac can't contact the MDM, you don't want to troubleshoot, you just want to get that machine back into service. So you need a consistent, fast way to set it up. And that's what MDS really comes about. So it, as I said, just a few seconds to do it. It does use the standard Mac OS installer. We do leverage the install macOS or start macOS install command to be able to kick that off with the hinge on the packages. So really what MDS does is any scripts you throw at it, applications, packages, it verifies those that they're in the correct format. If they're not, it repackages them for you and then includes them with the installer when it gets installed. So make sure you get the latest firmware updates. There is an ASR option. So if you're used to kind of monolithic imaging, that's really not the way you're supposed to be doing because it has the firmware updates, but there's some scenarios where it does work really well. Mainly if you have a machine at the same OS version and you want to just put it back to that same OS version, ASR can dramatically speed up that process. So it does support either. And it also, all the resources are local, so you either have a thumb drive, a flash drive, or a local web server that can pull the resources from. And as I'll talk about in a little bit, it can be fully automated or partially automated. So you can do it by just typing in a few commands, or we have what's called the automaton. And you also have scenarios where you have to do computer naming, where you want some intervention, where the person is prompted to put it in the inventory tag or information. We have folks that are entering in the subnet for that machine when they kick off the workflow. But again, you kick it off, it prompts you, you put in the information, you move on to the next one and do it as quick as possible. And everything that's in MDS is mainly done through the recovery partition. When you create a macOS install external drive, it basically is the recovery partition externally. When you boot to internet recovery, it's basically the recovery partition in the cloud that gets downloaded and launched. So it's that environment that it runs in. But mainly you boot up to recovery with Command R, and that's the OS that you boot from. So instead of net booting with the N key, use the recovery partition, which is there. If you don't have a recovery partition because you didn't decide you didn't need it when you had Deploy Studio or something like that, that's easy enough. You just boot to internet recovery, put you in that same environment, and then you can run the workflows. And the workflow is kicked off by a script that runs another great project called Imager, that folks are, I'm sure, familiar with, that lets you select the workflow and kind of kicks off all that, the install of the Mac OS. And those resources, that workflow, those workflows, configuration, all the resources like the Mac OS installer, the packages like Office and Adobe, Monkey, whatever, can be located on external drive, which is like an SSD that's plugged in, or just a cheap flash drive, or it can be on a disk image that we use. The script uses HDI util mount to mount that disk image. And so you think, well, you want a really fast SSD to do this. It turns out it doesn't matter because the Mac doesn't matter that much. The Mac OS installer copies all the resources to the destination. So it's pretty much a straight copy. There's not a lot of seek time. So having a fast SSD only matters it saves you a couple of minutes. And the web server, which I thought would make, triple the amount of time, turns out it takes the times from going from like 25 minutes to like 32 minutes. So it's a couple more minutes. So there's a lot of folks that are putting all the resources on a web server, booting recovery, and just running the commands. So they don't have to have a thumb drive plugged into the machine. And so that gets you to the point where you have to boot to recovery. So you have to hit Command R, and then you open up Terminal, you run the workflow. And so people wanted to say, like, I'm a busy person. I don't have that extra, 90 seconds to wait for recovery to boot up. And so, and that's especially true if you're trying to shave off time between a lot of different installs. So we have what's called a MDS automaton, which is an Arduino. It's actually Itsy Bitsy from Adafruit, and it emulates a keyboard. So instead of you pressing Command R and going up to the utilities menu and choosing, or the tools menu or utilities menu and choosing terminal, and then typing in HDI util and running a script, it does that for you. So imagine inside that little black box is a very cute robot that's typing on a little keyboard, and it goes and it does those things for you. And so that allows you to automate setting that up. So the process with the automaton is that you unbox the new Mac, and or an existing one, you walk up to it, you turn it on and hold the option key down. Once the option key's down, you'll see the boot selector. Then you plug in the automaton. Then you're done. If you're using the external drive, you plug that in as well, or maybe they're both plugged into a hub. But the idea is that you just boot up with option boot, plug it in, and then the automaton presses Command R and does all the commands to run the workflow, and the workflow will then automatically set up the Mac and reboot. And so the idea is that you're only spending a few seconds in front of that machine, you move on to the next one. But you might be asking, oh, Tim, what do you want me to do? Buy 30 or 40 or 200 of these automatons from you? Well, you don't have to, because they're open source hardware. You can go and we make the firmware available for free, but that would be nice for you to support the project, but it's kind of ridiculous to have 200 automatons. One of the nice things to do is that once the macOS installer copies all the resources to the destination drive, you can unplug the automaton, move on to the next one, which means you can probably get to about Mac number 5 before the first one's ready to be unplugged. And that's true of the thumb drive too. So if you walk up to a Mac, plug in the automaton and the thumb drive, hold down the option key, hold down the option key, plug the two things in, do the next one, do the next one, do the next one. Time you get to number 5, you don't have an automaton anymore. You just go to the first one, unplug the two things, and plug into the next one, and keep rolling along. So we did some time testing. It turns out it's not just a few seconds, because you got to do things like unboxing the Mac and sipping your coffee and considering things. Average, it takes about 2 minutes per Mac for the initial setup. Then you return after about 5 minutes, because that's how long it takes the installer to copy over the resources. And then you unplug it, move on to the next one. So we recommend not buying 200 automatons from us, but 3 to 5 per technician. And that kind of optimizes your workflow. So when you create a workflow in MDS, this is what it looks like. You just give it a name and a description of it. We've had folks that have 30 or 40 workflows, so it's important in those scenarios to do it. You can choose to do the macOS installer, whether or not you want to race install. We made it so that you can actually host the macOS installer on a disk image, so you don't have to change the workflow every time Apple revs the OS. We're up to 10.15.6 now, I guess, is in beta, so that's coming soon. And you can use ASR as well, or there's an option to not even install macOS. So you can use the OS that's built in. So if you just ordered a ton of the new MacBook Airs and they have 10.15.5 on them, that's fine. You can just ignore the OS installation, install the packages, and go. We split the resources in 3 different locations, in packages and apps, scripts, and profiles. And so these are basically 3 folders you select. The package and apps folder is kind of a magic folder, because MDS does its best job. Whatever you throw in there, it tries to figure out. So if you drop in like Google Chrome, it'll package that up for you, install it in applications. If you drop in a package that's not a correct distribution type package for the macOS installer, it'll repackage it for you and install it after the macOS installer puts it on. So you don't have to repackage it, it does it for you. It will sign, we have the option to package sign these as well. And so you can do that. The scripts, macOS installer only supports packages, but it will package those scripts up for you and run those scripts. And you can see there's a little up and down arrows next to it. I'll show you this in a demo in a second, that you can choose when it gets installed. So you can say if you want it to be at first boot, if you want to do it when you first log in, you can do that as well. We can create user accounts, which is great. You can hide the user accounts and those kind of stuff, and have it automatically log in, administer, those kind of things. You can create as many as you want. In fact, it was kind of a funny story is that I figured, why would you need more than one, right? You want to have an administrator account, then everything else kind of comes after that. Someone's like, well, I want 2. So literally the day I put the second user account, somebody's like, we want 3. So I gave up, and I'm like, you put as many as you want, and now we have, one customer is using like 9 or 10 local accounts for, like, they have summer camps and stuff like that, where they have different accounts for different users. So I thought that was kind of interesting. You can also set up options when on the target Mac to join Wi-Fi, which is great if you install Monkey and Monkey Report. It'll automatically be on Wi-Fi to be ready to do that. Computer naming, it was another great one. I had basic computer naming, and I was sat down and explained how important computer naming is for setting up machines. And so now we do variable substitution, and we can prompt the user for the computer name as well, and we can pre-fill it in. So we actually added in pick boxes now, so you can choose from different things to, not for the computer name, but for different options. There's, you can see at the bottom here is install Monkey Report for inventory. Oops. That's a really important, it's kind of an interesting way that it does that, because if you're hosting Monkey Report on this MDS server, it'll recognize that it's been installed, it's hosting it. It'll actually grab the script from the URL where the script is hosted, package that up, deploy that as a script that's run on the client that goes back to the Monkey Report to get it ready. So it makes it really easy to integrate Monkey Report. So the whole, this great UI and a lot of the kind of the initial setup, again, goes back to Patrick Exner, who pointed out that it should just be one click to install. It should be really easy. And so we worked really hard back and forth to make sure that getting these services set up should work out of the box with just turning it on, and also just integrating into workflow. And that's one of the exciting things. Same thing with Monkey. With Monkey, you can configure the client. You do have to install, you drop the packages in the packages folder for Monkey, but it will, you can specify the Monkey Report. It'll automatically populate that as well. And then this is the variables I was talking about before. You can pass your own custom variables to the to scripts that you're running. So, and you can prompt somebody, like say, what is the subnet for this computer, or what is your favorite color, or what building is this in, and they can type in or go from a pick list and choose that before the workflow runs, and then that information is passed to your scripts. So let me jump in and show you a quick demo of how the packages are working. So you can see in the workflow here that if you go into under resources, so I have the different scripts. You can see that you can choose, I just created this AD bind script. If I want to do it after macOS installed but before packages, after packages are installed, or when running workflow. And you just drag the order that you want to do that. You can do that for packages, scripts, or anything else. So it allows you to kind of give the order specifically that what you want to. A couple of things that I just want to highlight: the automatons. You can create the automaton right here in the UI, and so if you buy the Itsy Bitsy from Adafruit, you can configure it right here and create it right here. If you already have it from us, you get the nice little enclosure and a cable. You can configure it right in here. And we do some stuff with the automatons as well. And finally, I'll show you the Create OS installer. This is based on download macOS. This is based on the install macOS Python script that Greg Nagel has as part of the Monkey tools. And what it does, it goes and it downloads looks at the catalog currently in production, and downloads all.
All right.
Sorry, I had a little issue there for a minute. It switched sources on me. Hopefully you can still hear me. So that's the download macOS, and you can download it, and it does just like the script does. It caches that information. So if you have, it makes it really fast if you're recreating the image. And so you can see that it has up to 10.15.5, and I believe I haven't done this yet, but if I go to customer seed, I should have 10.15.6 in here as well. So that's a nice overview of MDS.
One thing I do want to mention is we do have
we have support contracts available. So if you wanted to have a support one, we have a vibrant Slack channel. In fact, Matt X was in there 5 minutes before the conference started answering questions for us. So that's just kind of the way he is. So I'm a little bit over my time, but I appreciate if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? You're still sharing your screen.